Hi everyone, I'm Katie and I'm here with Tiara, my friendly neighbor, and we just want to have a respectful conversation on our views of the pandemic and just kind of talk about our personal experience and our own thoughts and views on this. Just to start out, I just want to talk about respect from both sides because I've seen us divided and not being shown respect, and I just feel like we're all adults here and we can have a conversation because at the end of the day we all want the same thing. We all want to go back to normal life and reopen, and we all have our own reasons to do so, and just because yours isn't the same as ours or anybody else's doesn't give people the right to call names or be disrespectful. So just show compassion towards both sides, and remember we're all human here and we're trying to get through this together, and please enjoy watching. So let's get started. How has this pandemic affected you personally?
Well, I work in hospitality. I've worked in hospitality for the last 10 years in the Valley and in Los Angeles, and my husband also works in hospitality. We're both servers at the same restaurant in St. Helena, and being in the hospitality industry, restaurants have, especially in this area with the fires and everything the last few years, have really taken the hardest hit because it's a social atmosphere. People really go out for the experience, the food especially, but the experience as well. So this idea of going to takeout only for these restaurants, like they're basically barely staying afloat.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so for me personally, it's been a while since since this happened. It took us forever to get any sort of unemployment. We're finally getting unemployment, but my husband and I also live with my mother, who is an independent contractor, and she just now was able to apply for any sort of financial assistance. So she's seen zero money this entire time.
Yeah.
And it's pushed us to the point of, us having to move out of the state because we can't afford to be here anymore. And, we're kind of also thinking a little bit ahead of the game too, because once we do open back up and with the supposed restrictions that are going to be placed upon dine-in restaurants, it's just not really feasible for a restaurant to really social distance if they're going to make the money. And plus, when you go to a restaurant, you go there for their interaction. You go there for the experience and connecting with your server and connecting with the other people that you're with. So this idea, I've seen ridiculous pictures of people putting like plexiglass between, each other, and servers having to wear masks and gloves. Like, I understand the concept of safety, but I think this is going way beyond that.
Yeah.
And it's just not possible for these restaurants to survive and adhere to these strict standards because, especially like the restaurant I was working at before this happened, we serve hundreds and hundreds of people a day, and most of them are tourists.
Yeah.
So, this industry is being largely affected not just by the restrictions, but also by the travel restrictions and people just, this general fear of each other.
Yeah. I feel like it's not a point of you being, as we've been called, selfish for wanting to reopen, but it's your survival instincts to need to get back to work to support your family.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people don't see the bigger picture to the economic side of it. It's like, that's a survival instinct where you need to go to work and support your family. Right. And I don't think that, makes you selfish at all. And, yeah, I'm so sorry that you have to move out of your house. I'm really sad to see my neighbor go.
Yeah.
That's just awful.
I grew up here. I've lived here my entire life, and my whole family's here. We're going to live with my husband's brother, so at least we'll have some family there.
Yeah.
But, just the general temperature of California lately has been more and more oppressive, especially for people who are seeking freedom and just being able to navigate our lives as we see fit, which is, kind of what the Constitution was based on, that as long as you're not harming other people, which, with a situation like this, it's really tricky because there's this idea that, us just functioning as normal human beings is somehow harming somebody else.
Yeah.
Of
course.
And that's a really tricky one, but it's like I kind of compare it to like driving a car. You know, like everybody wants to have the freedom to drive a car, but there are certain risks involved with driving a car. You know, like even if you are a perfect driver, there are circumstances where you might injure somebody or kill somebody, but you're not going to stop driving because of that risk. Like we all, you know, function in society with these certain amount of freedoms, knowing that like just being alive comes with a certain amount of risk. And for something like this to happen, and like quarantining healthy people has never been done before.
Yeah, I know, that's crazy.
And it's interesting because if you actually look through the health orders for the county and for other counties, and I was reading this article, and this lawyer was like breaking it down, and he's like, this order was originally created to quarantine people who are sick, and now they're flipping the script and they're making it so it's for healthy people, which there's no scientific evidence that actually shows that this is something that's actually beneficial. So we're basically living a mass experiment.
Yeah,
you know?
It's crazy. Is there any way that you can provide me links I could post down below with some of the information you get stuff from?
Yeah, definitely.
I know you've got a couple of interesting things I think people might want to look at. And I'm very blessed that my husband's able to still work. And part of the reason why I feel so strongly against, like, about your situation is because I can just imagine if he wasn't able to go to work, we wouldn't be here right now. Yeah. And the fact that people who are on this side have a lot more to lose. They have kids, they have homes, they have family they need to support. So, like, in my opinion, it's just like, I feel like the government is taking that away from me, and I don't want to be told whether or not I have to stay here. Yeah. And we've stayed here long enough, and our numbers have gotten a lot better. So I do think there should be a safe way to reopen. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on, and when it comes to personal health especially, because for me, I've always taken a lot of personal responsibility for my health. So this idea that I'm responsible for somebody else's health is kind of foreign to me.
Yeah.
You know, I've always felt like it's like the individual needs to be empowered to learn how to take care of their own health and not so navigating this, like, oh, what's safe, and am I responsible for, like, washing my hands 20 times a day and wearing a mask, which there's plenty of evidence to show that masks are not effective.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that.
And this idea of wearing gloves is ridiculous to me. I mean, I'm at the grocery store watching the checker, like, wearing the same pair of gloves that they're wearing for every single guest that they check out. And I'm like, I just touched that stuff. Now you're touching it with gloves that also transfer. So, I mean, there's just some really illogical things that are going on.
I think it's just a scare thing. It's people are scared. I know masks are for people who are sick, so it helps, you know, not spread it to someone else, but I don't get why healthy people have to wear it.
Well, because there's this idea of
well,
there's this idea of non-symptomatic carriers too.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I don't really get. There's a lot of scientists that I've been listening to and following that talk about this idea, like, healthy people don't get other people sick, and even asymptomatic carriers. There's maybe some science, but not a lot of science to back it up. And of course, with anything in today's culture, it's like you find an argument, you can find a counter argument. Like, pretty much you can just go like this to find evidence to support, and that's called confirmation bias. Like, people are going to look for the evidence to support their own theories. And like, I'm guilty of that. I'm sure everyone's guilty of that. But I think it's important that we're constantly challenging our perspectives, because, you know, people say, oh, the science is settled and scientists are saying this. I'm like, yeah, but there are also scientists saying this, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think what it comes down to is who stands to profit the most, who stands to benefit the most from pushing a certain agenda. And I think with what's going on right now, it's about control. Yeah. It's about taking our freedoms away. Mm-hmm. You know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, like, and we can see that in like the tug of war that's happening, especially in California with Gavin Newsom. You know, like, you see all these people going out to the beach. What was it, in Orange County? Yeah. And you know, the I watched an interview with the governor or the mayor of Orange County, and he was like, you know what, I just got a letter from Gavin Newsom saying that our beaches are shut down because he saw all the footage of all these people being out on the beach, and he was like, I never got a call from him. I never had there wasn't a conversation about like what's going on. He's like, my guys were on the ground. You know, people were social distancing. We had conversations with people who weren't.
Yeah.
You know, and for him to just call me up and be like, you're shut down, you know, it's obviously a power play. It's not about health or safety, especially since like being out in the sunshine and exercising and doing all those things helps reduce the amount of sick people that you have.
Well, they're saying that we're allowed to, you know, now we're allowed to go to parks, but not the playgrounds. But I just feel like that's really still limiting, and I feel like if we allow our government to keep telling us how to live our lives and what to do, then we're condoning that behavior. And eventually that can turn into something way bigger and way out of our control that I just like don't feel comfortable allowing.
Well, there's this thing called for the greater good.
Oh yeah.
And it's communist social rhetoric that's been used for a really long time. And all you have to do is look back at history and see how well those types of things have played out,
or
especially
even other
for
countries.
People. Yeah.
Like my dad said he was in the Marines, and he went and experienced that firsthand, and that's what he's mostly afraid of. He's like, this is what will happen if we don't speak up.
Yeah.
And advocate for ourselves.
Yeah. We're acquiescing our own personal power and our own sovereignty, because our sovereignty is like the most important thing. It's like who decides what I can do with my body, where I can go, how I can parent my children. That's a big one, because the more and more power we give away, the more we are allowing them to tell us like, oh, like, you know, if you're not doing what they tell you to do, like, what are they going to do with your kids? You know, like, that's one of my fears. You know, I have 2 small children, and as you see this exponential curve of, you know, these power grabs, is, you know, what at what point are they going to be like, you know, well, you have to do this in order to, you know, travel, or you know, you have to do this in order to keep your kids, you know, because there's this slippery slope of, you know, even just making medical decisions for your children.
Yeah.
Like who gets to choose, like,
All right, go ahead and continue. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so what I was saying is, when it comes to like medical decisions for our children, a lot of times we have this situation where we're appealing to an authority, like a doctor, or, you know, maybe it's some sort of government regulation, right? But ultimately, we should be able to choose, because we know our children, we know what we think is best. Even if it's not the best, you should still be able to choose.
Yeah.
Because you're the one who has to deal with the consequences of that choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure. Well, from what I've heard a lot of people say is the reason why shelter in place is important is to not overwhelm healthcare workers. So what do you think about that?
I think that's a noble cause. I feel like now that we're like almost 2 months into this, there is a lot of data that we are able to like gather from what has been actually happening. So when this first started, they were using computer models to generate the numbers to see, you know, how this was going to pan out. You know, and they had all these scary numbers. Oh, you know, 2 million people are going to die, or like all this stuff, and we're going to have all these cases. And now that we're looking at the data, it doesn't necessarily seem to line up. So I think this was a couple weeks ago, so the numbers might be a little bit different now, but I was watching this presentation with Del Bigtree, and he was talking about the numbers that they're getting. So at that time, there was 85,000 people that had been tested positive. So they either had it or have it. Mm-hmm. And the death rate at the time, I think was, let me see if I can remember correctly, I think it was around 43,000. Now, the new computer models were saying that 85,000 number of people that were testing positive, was it 85,000 or was it 850,000? No, it was 85,000. So they projected that, no, it was 850,000. Sorry, 850,000 was the number of people who had been tested positive. The new computer models were saying on the low end, at least 25 times that amount, up to 50 times, actually, because of course they're not testing every single person.
Yeah.
So at least 25 times that amount were the ones who actually had it or have it. So I think, now I'm trying to do these numbers in my head, I think that came to like 43 million or something like that.
Wow.
No, not 43 million.
It's okay if you don't know right now. Just
but,
go ahead and tag me in
Yeah. So I've done the crunch of these numbers a lot of times. So that means that the death rate for this particular pandemic was anywhere from 0.11% to 0.22%. This was 2 weeks ago, so it might have gone up a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's on the high end, because there's been some stuff in the media that's been talking about how they're kind of padding the death counts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, even if you're looking at, not even considering, any sort of padding of the numbers or anything like that. This is new data. This is like new computer models based on actual data, not based on some projection, like pulling it out of the ether. So 0.11% and 0.22%, I mean, in a population of 7.5 billion people on this planet, is going to be a high number.
Yeah.
But to put that in perspective, the average flu season has a 0.2 to like a 0.5% death rate. There was 80,000 flu deaths in 2018 alone.
Yeah. You don't see us staying home for the flu.
Yeah, exactly. And even with like H1N1 and like all these other pandemics, like we've never had a response like this.
Yeah.
And the numbers don't even match those. And this coronavirus isn't even as scary as some of those other diseases.
Y'all, sorry for the interruption. As I was editing, I realized that we had about 20 minutes of unrecorded parts of our interview. My camera just decided to tweak out and not record. However, I'm trying to remember a few talking points of what were in those 20 minutes, and I briefly remember it being about the effects of social distancing having a harm on your mental health. And I kind of talked about my own personal experience with it and how I've been struggling a lot. Like, the anxiety of being around other humans is just unnatural, and it brings a lot of fear and will continue to bring fear even after this is over, and anxiety. And we talked a little bit about the numbers of suicides and spousal abuse and just other horrible things that are happening while we are social distancing and staying inside. Another one of our talking points was how it's hard to wrap your head around being responsible for somebody else's health when never before we were responsible for that. And that totally just, blows my mind that now I'm responsible for your grandmother's health. And we kind of talked a little bit about the choice of, if you're high risk and you choose to self-isolate, that's your choice, but it shouldn't have to be my responsibility to do that. I'm really sorry we're missing those 20 minutes. There was a lot to talk about, but yeah, enjoy the rest of the video. Thanks for understanding.
So this woman in Florida, they basically arrested her and because she opened up her salon.
Yeah.
And was like, this is crazy. Like, I have to open my business. And they took it to the court and they threw it out. So, I mean, because when it comes down to it, these laws are not, or these orders, they're not constitutional.
Well, I know that, I know a few hairstylists that have been doing hair because I'm in that industry. And they got a letter saying that they will lose their business license if they get caught, operating during this time. Right.
And I like I said, I'm in no way trying to, give advice to anyone. I definitely think you have to know the law, and if you don't know your rights, you don't have any.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're in a position where you are like, oh, what's gonna happen if I do this? Like, you need to know the letter of the law. You need to research it for yourself, or find somebody who can advise you that knows. Constitutional lawyer. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're in pretty high demand right now. But there are people out there.
I've seen tons of posts about people getting lawyers and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, but because these orders are so unconstitutional, if they were fought, they can't be won, on the grounds of just, these civil servants are here to support the Constitution.
A lot of them aren't doing it, though.
No.
I've seen a lot of like articles and stuff of officers just saying, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not gonna fine someone for going to the beach.
Yeah.
So I don't remember exactly where that was at, but I know that that it's happening, and it's starting to get real.
I mean, good for them, you know, because I'm sure that they're probably in a tenuous position of possibly losing their jobs and stuff like that. But, you know, they swear an oath when they come into their positions that they basically swear on the Constitution, on the Bible, that they're gonna, you know, uphold those things.
Yeah.
So, you know, unfortunately they're being put into a pretty bad position, like of having to choose one or the other, which it shouldn't be.
Yeah,
you know.
for sure. Okay, well, let's wrap this up.
Okay.
So let's just do what you think our future looks like for the economy if we were to keep going the way we are right now, and how we as a community can come together and open back up safely.
That's a big question. I think that if this continues on very much longer, we're going to lose a lot more businesses. I think the restaurants are going to go first because with this phased reopening, I get why they're doing it, but at the same time, it's not realistic for a lot of these businesses. I mean, I was reading an article where one of Trump's advisors, he's a restaurant owner in Texas, and he has a chain of restaurants that employs like 2,000 people. And he's like, these people that are making these requirements and these orders, like, they've never ran a business like this, you know, or obviously they just don't care. Yeah. Because he's like, doing to-goes, he's like, with the amount of packaging costs, he's like, I'm actually losing money. Yeah. So the only reason why I'm staying open is to keep some of my employees, like, actually keep them employed. And to open a restaurant at half capacity, it's not feasible. Like, people are just going to be losing money. So they're not going to be able to stay in business. And I forget the statistics, but restaurants and the hospitality industry are huge in this country. Huge. I mean, they employ millions and millions of people. And that's just like from like the servers down to the cooks, and then all of the people that supply them, you know, like, I mean, just briefly to talk about the food supply chain. There are farmers right now dumping milk and trying to figure out what to do with the animals that they were going to slaughter to send to the restaurants, dumping millions and millions of pounds of vegetables and stuff because they have no one to buy it.
Same with the oil companies and stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, from every level, everything is getting disrupted, and I don't think people are looking at the long-term effects. You know, I have coworkers that I'm like, I've been trying to reach out and be like, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about having to go back to work and wear masks and gloves and, you know, and have tables be, you know, further apart and operate at half capacity, and like, coming from a server, I've been serving for 10 years, and like, I've worked my way up in my establishments. My restaurant I've been working at, I've been working there for 5 years, and I make a lot of money there, you know, and a lot of it has to do with the tourist industry and all that stuff. And I'm asking my coworkers, like, well, how do you feel about this? And they're like, well, we're making more money on unemployment than we are when we were working, so we should just shelter in place longer. And I'm like, you guys do realize that the longer we do this, the more the industry is gonna dissolve, basically, because
we won't have anything to go back to.
Exactly.
When this is over.
Exactly. And there's going to be more competition for jobs because there's going to be more places that are closed. It's so crazy to me that we're doing this giant social experiment, and with basically little to no foundation in science, which I know people will disagree on that, but look it up. There really isn't.
I don't understand, like, how we can continue to do this when it's, like, this virus is still going to be here, like, out in December.
Yeah.
So, like, how long are we going to be in these phases? And it's going to come back. From what I hear, there's going to be a second wave in December. Like, are we going to do this all over again in December?
I think that's the plan.
Oh.
And the thing about it is like, how do they know there's going to be a second wave in December unless it's been planned, you know? Because it's like you're playing God here, like, predicting the future, and it's kind of crazy to me because, like, first of all, the symptoms of this thing are not that, like, intense.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of, like, being 6 feet away from someone, where is the data or where is the scientific study that shows that 6 feet does anything?
Yeah.
I don't remember where I heard this, but there was a guy who said, like, oh yeah, we just kind of, like, came up with that number. Like, there's no, like, they just, like, oh yeah, 6 feet, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
There's no basis in science. So it's just, and it just creates more confusion and more fear and more, you know, and it's just not realistic. And if we continue this way, our economy is going to be destroyed. They're printing money out of thin air to pay us. What do you think? How do you think that that's going to create, like, value for our dollar? No, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not only are we going to lose jobs, but our money is going to be absolutely worthless.
Yeah.
And people aren't going to be spending it on the economy. They're going to be hoarding it because they have no idea what's coming next.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I'm not spending my stimulus check unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah.
You know, I'm leaving that in my savings for, you know, a few months from now when that extra $600 a week I'm getting from unemployment drops down to $450.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm just like, you know, and I'm moving to Utah. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a job there.
Yeah. It's
So,
a lot of unknowns right now, I feel like, and that's just unsettling. So how do you feel like we could safely start to reopen?
well, I feel like that word safe is pretty heavy loaded, if you know what I mean, because I feel like safety is completely relative and subjective. And like I said earlier, it comes down to personal responsibility, because there's a Benjamin Franklin quote. He says, if you trade liberty for safety, you don't deserve either, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, how much of your freedom are you willing to trade for safety? And I think that's what it comes down to. It seems like now, in this particular culture that we're in, people are willing to trade a lot of freedom for their safety. But do you really get safety? Because, I mean, you can't predict all outcomes, and you can't, like, unless you literally live in a plastic bubble, you know, like, you're getting packages at your home. How many people touched that?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I have to Lysol down my packages. I think I stopped doing that like a week ago.
But, and you know, and this idea of hand sanitizer, which is antibacterial, not antiviral most of the time. You know, it's just like, there's going to be holes in every system. So this idea, I know people are like, well, it's more safe. It's a little bit more safe or whatever. But when you trade your quality of life for safety,
Yeah.
you know?
We gotta wrap this up, so I just like if you could share some talking points of just the overall view and situation.
Well, I think it all comes down to sovereignty and personal liberty, you know? Just taking personal responsibility for your health and and not projecting it onto anybody else. You know, your safety is your responsibility, not the government's, especially because when you put that in the hands of the government, you know, they can interpret that so many different ways, and we really don't want that. You know, especially our founding fathers, like, they fought to have that type of freedom for us, and I just think it's so important that we, you know, like you said, have compassion for other people's viewpoints, but not compromise
Yeah.
our own freedom, because I don't know, maybe someday they'll be thanking us for standing up for
Yeah,
our freedom.
hopefully. Well, thank you so much for sharing your view. I just want to say we're all human. We're all going through this together, and to just, you know, maybe open up your view a little bit and take a look to the other side. I know there's so much more to be said. We could talk for hours about this. I'm sure there's a lot of counter things that could be said, but this is just our view. So again, I just ask that you be respectful and not call names, or, you know, just have compassion. We're all human. And thanks for watching.